Hi, my name is Christopher. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to spend a few minutes walking you through the process I went through to getting this new console. I'm using this console to run Hauptwerk software, which is a virtual pipe organ software. I, for several years, was using a smaller 2-manual instrument that I had purchased maybe 10 years ago from the Roland company, which is part of Rogers Organ's company. And that instrument was wonderful for what it was and served me well for about 10 years. But I was always eager to play some works that worked better with instruments with more than just 2 manuals, more than just 2 keyboards. And so last year in 2023, I set about to find a builder who would be willing to build a custom console for me in a way that would allow me to utilize my Hauptwerk software and have more manuals and more flexibility, more options to use. And so after searching high and low and looking overseas and around the United States, I found a builder in Minnesota that primarily focuses on doing custom builds for this type of project. So I spent about 3 months in what I'd call the design phase, working on what it was that I was going to want in a console. And I established that I wanted 4 manuals. Well, actually, I initially was going to go for 3. And as I got into the project, I figured out that it was one of those decisions I was going to make not too many times in my lifetime to buy a new console. And so I went ahead and added the extra manual to give the utmost flexibility. And since I have a sample set or 2 that does have 4 manuals, I thought it would be best to go ahead and splurge a little bit and add that 4th manual, which I did. And part of the design process was to figure out exactly what types of piston rails I'd like to have, how many buttons I would be able to use for setting registrations, how many toe pistons or toe studs I was going to want, how many expression shoes or expression pedals I was going to want, the color of the wood, the species of the wood, the size of the music rack, the shape of all of the various pieces and parts of this instrument were things that I needed to decide upon before going into a final contract for the build. So I would say it took about 3 months to get working through all of those decisions. And once those decisions were finalized, it took about 6 months for the project to be finished in Minnesota. And as you'll see in the videos and the photographs that I'm showing you here, when the console was shipped across the country to my home in Oregon, it didn't come as a finished unit. Rather, it came in a lot of big, giant boxes full of dozens, if not hundreds of parts that were going to need to be reassembled from the ground up. Well, this turned into its own project that lasted a couple of days as I opened each piece and inventoried what had arrived and arranged things so that they made some sense to me so that I could start to rebuild this console in an efficient way. So I spent the better part of 2 days putting all of those pieces back together, studying the images that I was sent from the builder, the original builder, and trying to make heads or tails of what piece was going to go with what other piece. And there were dozens and dozens of screws and bolts of different sizes and shapes and colors and thread counts that I was going to need to identify and put into the right components so that everything lined up properly, and so that all those pieces would fit together and function as a cohesive console. So I like this kind of project. It's kind of fun to me to build and rebuild things. I build furniture, and so this was something that was not too difficult to get through, but I would say that anybody who wants to, who doesn't have those skills, or doesn't have a background in maybe some minor electronics and things like that, or wood building, that you might consider maybe a different option than I chose when I got this particular console built. You may want to opt for a console that is pre-built and shipped to you as a finished product, rather than this one, which was somewhat of like a model airplane that I had to take all these pieces and parts and put it back together. But in this particular model airplane, it also had all of the controls, the computing system, the sound cards, and the various MIDI systems and all of that, the circuit boards, all of that stuff needed to be rewired and put into place in the guts of this console in order for it to finally function. All of that to say, after a couple of days, I got it all back together and turned it on and powered up the computers, and from there, it was a process of multiple days, if not weeks, of loading into the new computer all of the various sample sets that I had acquired over the last several years. I think I probably have about 12 or 14 different sample sets, from very large English or German instruments to smaller instruments from Holland, a very large instrument from Italy, and a couple from France. And so it took some time to get all of those loaded back in, and for each instrument that I loaded back into the computer, I needed to assign keyboards so that the keyboards would speak to the computer and tell it what parts of those sample sets to be playing. Same thing with the pedals, and same thing with the pistons. I needed to take time to reset all of those for each of these individual organs. And I've got most of them done by now. And so it's going to be a work in progress to do a few other little tweaks and so forth as I hone in on some of the settings that I want and some of the customizations that I'd like to have. For instance, on a couple of sample sets, there were no crescendo pedals on the original instruments. But with the magic of Hauptwerk software, I can add a crescendo pedal or a crescendo pedal feature to those consoles or to those instruments that may not have had them in their original build. And so, but it takes time. So that's going to be a process ongoing from this point forward as I add those special custom features to the various sample sets that I use on this console. All of this to say, it has been a project that has lasted a lot longer than I thought it would from the onset, now going on some 9, 10, maybe 11 months since the inception of this process. But it has been exciting nevertheless. One of the things that I also did as part of the project was taking that small console that I was using in a room in my house and moved it to a different building on my property that what I'll call is my man cave, if you will. It's a much larger space, a very reverberant space, as you can probably tell from the audio quality of this particular video. And there's a lot more space to spread out. And so part of my lead up to getting this console installed was to also purchase new speakers so that it would fill up a much larger space. The space that I'm in now is about 1,000 square feet compared to the room that I was in previously was around 200 square feet, if that. And so I needed to get out and find a proper subwoofer and rear and front channel speakers that would work well with this new design. And so I ended up going with the Rhythmic F18 18-inch subwoofer, which goes down to 10 hertz, which is very effective for the low 32-foot pedal stops that you'll find on several of the sample sets that I have acquired. And then for my rear speakers, I'm using the Definitive Technology DM80s, which are a large tower speaker with 6 speakers on the top, 3 on the front, 3 on the back, and then each of them have a 12-inch subwoofer that is powered as well. And those go down to somewhere around 24 hertz, I believe, or thereabouts. So you get that nice, full, rich, deep bass that you're going to want with many of the sample sets and the frequencies that go so low with the pedal pipes that have been sampled. So bringing all that together with my Focal-shaped twin speakers as my front speakers, this room is filled with incredible sound from the various sample sets. The building will shake with the thunderous bass of this massive 18-inch subwoofer, and the fidelity, the quality of the mid-range and high-range from the speakers that I've selected has been really phenomenal, and I've been very, very pleased with the quality of the speakers that I have made the decision to purchase for this entire project. So I'm happy to share any other information that you might want to know about as you read this, or submit comments in the chat or on the feed. Please let me know if there's other details you'd like to know about. I'm happy to share that information. So all in all, I'm very excited to have this new console in place with all of the great sound that it provides and the many, many hours of enjoyment that I hope to get from it. As I said, it's still going to be a process of customizing it a bit going forward, and that will be an eternal process because I do have a bad habit of finding sample sets as they get released that I just fall in love with and can't live without. So I'll certainly be adding some other sample sets going forward, and that's just the way it is. But for the meantime, thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed hearing a little bit about what the process of getting this new console has been like. Take care.